All right, everyone. Thank y'all for joining us. My name is Chris Hennessy. Normally, I would say this is So I Did a Thing, but this is not So I Did a Thing. This is Do You Have What It Takes? And I'm joined by an all star group of guys here, man. Mitch reached out to me. Like, we put this whole thing together in less than a week, like 4 or 5 days. He said, man, look, I need you to meet this guy. I want to introduce you to this guy, Matt Herrington. He's doing some really cool stuff. He's got this men's retreat called Inside Outside, where it's basically, uh, I wrote it down here, where you take an introspective look at your inside while being outside. So it's this really cool, really phenomenal men's retreat. I think you'd like it. And then just kind of pitch the idea of this live show to me, where we talk about, do I have what it takes? Like, how often do we ask ourselves that? He said Matt was going to be a part of it. Bryan was going to be a part of it. And I was like, heck yeah, count me in. I'm there. So here we are. We've got a lot of cool stuff lined up for you. These guys are going to be talking about, a time in their life whenever they ask themselves, do I have what it takes? I ask myself that all the time, but they're going to be talking about specific instances. And then we are going to be talking about the Inside Outside retreat a little bit later on. But without any further ado, without me getting into it anymore, I'm going to let Matt Herrington take the stage. Matt, what is going on, man?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Super stoked to be here with you tonight. It's just seriously a real honor and privilege to be hanging with these guys and to be with all of you. I got to give a little bit of credit to where I got this question in this context. The author, John Eldridge, Wild at Heart, he poses this question a lot, that's like the question that we ask ourselves, especially as men during our whole life, is this question, like, do I have what it takes, right? And so I imagine that many of you can relate to that, right? At different times in life, it just weighs on you, like, do I have what it takes? So super excited to talk about it tonight and to get into it with these guys. But just to start off, like, I am living proof of what we're going to talk about tonight, because one of the things that it doesn't take, having what it takes does not mean having a bunch of LinkedIn followers. Like, I feel a little bit out of place sometimes with these guys because I'm new to the LinkedIn scene. Like, it was 6 months ago I posted for the first time on LinkedIn. It just shows the power, of LinkedIn, right? But also the power of what can happen when you believe, like, I have what it takes. I have something to offer. I can be a leader. So I'm proof of what we're going to talk about tonight. So, really, when I think about this question, do I have what it takes? I think about when I have any question, there's different places that I can go to ask that question, right? I can ask a friend. I can ask a coach. I can ask my wife. I can ask God. So there's a lot of places that we can go with a question. And this question is so important to me that I think it's important for us to consider that where we ask the question can really determine what we do with the answer we get and what we do with it, right? So it's so important that we get to the answer to this question inside ourselves. Because if we look outside, right, we'll say, I don't have enough LinkedIn followers for that. Or like, I don't have enough experience for that. Or I don't have enough of a following for that. And we'll limit ourselves, right? And I know that we're going to talk a lot more later on about limiting beliefs. But man, these comments in the chat are just blowing up,
going nuts, man.
I wish I could.
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you real quick for just a second. So, thanks to the beauty of technology and Restream, we are streaming on 4 of my channels and at least 2 of everybody else's. So we're somewhere around 10 to 12 channels just being blasted out into the interweb. So that is freaking amazing.
That is awesome. Yeah, seriously, appreciate you guys showing up. It's super cool. Super cool to be with you. So when I look back at, let's call it my 20s, right? I didn't know anything, frankly, right? Like, I was full of like spit and vinegar and just thought like I had it all figured out. And if you ask my wife, like, she'll tell you like that's definitely not true. And now I've realized that. It's taken me some time. But it felt like, well, if I just get busier, or if I just start another business or have another iron in the fire, right? Like, eventually something will stick, or eventually I'll find my purpose, or eventually, we'll get it to work out. And but there was a lot of times where if I was going to get real honest with myself, the answer to that question, do I have what it takes? At the time, I don't think I could answer it with an affirmative yes. Right? There was too much like regret or past decisions or bad decisions, right? And that stuff would hang with me. And I think that at a certain point, this will be recent for me. I was up in front of a group talking about some principles, talking about being disciplined. It's so important to have a culture of discipline. It's so organization. We're up there disciplined and how important it is to be disciplined, but not really exercising a lot of that, in your life. And so something had to change. I remember writing in my journal one night, like, I joke about how patience is not one of my strong suits, but it's not funny. Like, every negative outcome in my life is a result of being impatient and just undisciplined,
Yeah.
And it was kind of random, but one day I just shot Mitch Whiting, who's with us tonight, a message, and I was like, "Hey, I need to talk to somebody, and you're that guy." Because I got to the point where, like, the books, right? I had read all the books. I remember telling Mitch this. I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I read the books, like, watch the YouTube videos." And like, I'm doing a lot of the right things. Like, I believe a lot of the right things, but it's not translating to anything right now in my life. Like, I'm not happy with the way I'm showing up for my kids. I'm not really happy with the way I'm showing up in general as a leader. And so I reached out to him, and honestly, that for a couple reasons was just like a huge game changer for me, right? Psychologically, reaching out to someone was huge. It was like accepting and confronting that this isn't going to change unless I do something about it. And I need someone that can help hold me accountable, that can help guide my steps, that can really help move me from motion, like all these good things I was doing, but to like legitimate action and progress. So that's been huge for me, is the accountability. And that's one of the big things that we'll talk about at the event, at the men's retreat, and also will be a part after the event, is having an accountability community or opportunity to tap into that accountability, because it's so huge. And I think that everyone on this call can relate that there's something really powerful when you're going to check in with someone every week or every other week. And,
sure.
There's something seriously like sacred and legitimate about that cadence of checking in weekly with someone to report on what you're doing, on what you've committed to do. So one of the other things that we're definitely going to talk about, spend a lot of time talking about at the men's retreat is inside you is where we have to go. Like, that's where you have to go to find the answer to that question. I remember for years, like when I was younger, I relied a lot on my parents for the answer to that question. Like, do I have what it takes? Well, I have great parents who never let me think that I didn't have what it takes. And that was awesome, right? Like, there was nothing that they didn't make me think that I could do, which I'm so grateful for. And then as I got older, right, then it's like your professors or your friends, and then it's like your grades, and then it's your job or your business. Then, my wife, like, that's where I would go for, do I have what it takes? But really, until I took that question to God and like just me and him, right, super personally, that's when something clicks. Like, that's when something changes, is when we stop relying on outside people and things for the answer to that question. Do I have what it takes?
For real.
So, I mean, I'll tell you anyways, though, right? Like, even though I know you got to go find it for yourself, I will tell you absolutely do have what it takes. Absolutely, because you were born with it. It's not like a question of, can you go and acquire it? You already have it. It's just a matter of uncovering it and exposing it and believing it. So, I mean, absolutely, you have what it takes. You were born with what it takes. You came out of the womb crying, right? As your only mechanism for survival. Like, someone had to hear you in order to survive. There's some kinds of lizards and other things, like their mom will eat them if they don't run away when they're born, right? Or a baby calf, like I'm a cow guy from my past life. they stand up in minutes and they can go and find what they need to find, from their mom to survive. But humans, when we're born, that's all we got is crying, and like someone has to hear us to survive. So when we start, if that's like, oh, that's too touchy feely, or like I don't like to share my thoughts, or like I don't need to be heard, you absolutely do, because it's a part of your survival mechanism, right? And at some point, I'm gonna guess that someone said to you, wait, no, not that though, right? Like, we don't need to hear that though, or we don't need to hear you. And so we didn't feel heard, and we start to sink back and like slink back into silence.
Right.
And I think that becomes so common for so many people, especially men, because it just historically has been more taboo or whatever to talk about that kind of stuff. But it's okay to be like, I need to be heard. John Elridge also talks about how we need to have a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue, or a beauty to love. Like, that's at our core, in our soul, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we take those things and this question, do I have what it takes, to what the world and other things like offer us, it can be super damaging, and we'll be showing up way more primal than we will powerful. So I just want you all to know that you absolutely have what it takes, and that it's not a matter of acquiring it, it's a matter of uncovering it. And that's really what has inspired me to start Inside Outside and to have a men's retreat, is to provide people an experience where they can go completely unplug and disconnect and find that.
And there's something about that unplugging, isn't there? And just disassociating yourself and disconnecting from the outside world for a little bit and getting outside to really kind of get your mind clear enough to take in everything. No distractions, no nothing.
Absolutely. Like, even the good things in our life, right? Like, even our families and like the great things are like, we have to get away from that momentarily to just be able to really focus in.
For sure. And we're going to talk about that a little more later, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
About the retreat. Cool, man. Did you have anything else you were going to share right there?
No, I mean, I'm sure I'll have something else to add.
Okay. All right, good deal. Awesome, man. I love it. I love what you're doing with, like I said, I love what you're doing with the Inside Outside. And I love, like you said, it takes, getting alone with God. And that's really where you're going to find out that you have what it takes. I know that it was for me, and I know it was for Mitch, and I'm sure it was with Bryan. You've got to, he made us, he created us. He's the one that put that in us. And it's only by plugging into him that we're going to actually get that figured out. Right. Who was going to go next? I forgot. I didn't write it down. Was it Bryan?
The good doctor.
The good doctor is in the house. Bryan, so if y'all don't know Bryan Sagray, man, look, if you don't know Bryan, you're not doing LinkedIn right. He posts 1.2 million times a day. He's basically a robot at this point, but he's built an amazing community. And this is what's crazy about it, y'all. He hadn't just built a community of followers. He's built a community of connections, of people he connects with. He takes a ton of them offline with phone calls and Zoom calls and in-person meetups. He just had Raquel at his house. Was it last week, Bryan?
Yeah, this past weekend. Yep.
Like, he is the epitome of what it means to actually connect with someone and build relationships. So Bryan, talk to us, man. Do you have what it takes?
Yes, I do. Thanks to my wife, she finally pulled it out of me and told me it's true. I really do. No, I'm just teasing. You guys know I love my wife and I shout her out all the time. But for me, I'm gonna try to tell like a little story that sort of made me realize that what I truly think is, it's definitely about leading from the inside out, and just doing that daily, consistently, and just little by little, and it creates this full circle that just continues to feed itself, right? But for me, the way it all started was I had to come to the realization about that myself. And in order to get there, I was running, at the time, it was my career. I was an athlete at the time and basically was competing at a really, really high level. But everything that went into that, that I loved about running and about all of that started to sort of deteriorate, because, being at that really high level, there's a lot of pressure, there's burnout. You're not really doing things for yourself anymore. You're doing it for a label. You have lots of coaches and people telling you what to do. And so it just kept pushing me further and further down, inside, the higher up I was climbing, right? So a lot of people here can relate to that. I mean, as a surgeon, as a residency director, as a business owner, right? Everyone always sees you up here, but sometimes you don't see you see yourself way down here. And so all this stuff just kept pushing and pushing down. And I figured I had what it took because, I kept getting it done. But what kind of happened at the time was I basically hit rock bottom, walked away from the sport completely, and literally abandoned running for like 10 or 11 years. I went to medical school, met my wife, and like my whole life changed. And what I realized in that moment was that even though I had what it took, for me at least, a lot of people will use this terminology and they'll say something like, no one else is coming to save you, right? You see that posted like on LinkedIn as like a hook all the time. No one else is coming to save you. Well, I'll probably lose a few followers for this, but I don't really care. The question is if no one's coming to save you, I feel really sorry for you because the Lord, of course, is going to come, number one. And number two, if he doesn't, there's got to be a mom, brother, sister, father, friend, uncle, right? So when everyone thinks that like they're out there on their own doing it, which is what I thought for the whole time, you will find out in some way, very humbling, and in a very hopefully, a not so bad way, that you're not enough just on your own. At least I'm not. And so for me, it was finding out where my limit was and then finding systems in place or having different feedback mechanisms that I was able to use to, get me to that point. And so basically a few weeks ago, I had something else go on personally and discovered running in my life again. And it was this whole full circle experience where something that had broken me before, I was now able to welcome that back into my life at a time, when I was ready for it. And I think the only way that I was able to do that was because of the support system in place. People like Mitch, I talk with him frequently, lots of you guys on this platform, my wife, family. And so I agree with everyone here and with Matt essentially in that you guys have what it takes. There's no doubt that you don't. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is to learn that reaching out and asking for something is not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of failure. It's not a sign of any of that. It's a sign of courage, strength, and vulnerability to have the ability to lean on someone else and know, hey, at this point in time, I'm not enough. I need something, right? So for me, the whole, am I enough is sort of like checking my ego at the door. And that's what you guys see on LinkedIn too, is just me sharing, maybe sometimes a little bit too much, but, I'm a vulnerable guy. And so for me, I think that's that's really great, Randy. I love that. That's great. And so for me, it's really using, that vulnerability is what's really given me my strength, and knowing that, if you share something, the likelihood that you're the only person that's ever experienced that is like almost zero, right? And so if you're willing to put that out there or ask for that in someone else, then there's a high likelihood that you're going to find someone who's experienced that, and then you're going to be able to connect with them. And so, yeah, for me, that's what's been really important, is just having that system in place and then knowing when I need to, quote, activate that system and lean on somebody else.
I love it. And I like what you said, like you feel bad, about not having somebody to come save you. If you see that, like you feel bad for them, because to me, it makes me feel bad for someone if they think that, because you should definitely have a support system where if you need saving, if you need help, if you need a leg up, if you need a pat on the back or a kick in the ass or whatever, you have somebody there to do it. And that's absolutely crucial.
Right.
And
yeah,
I didn't know you were an athlete before we talked last night. So that's kind of pretty cool to know that you went from an athlete to a doctor and are now finding your love for running again.
Yeah. It's been it's been a heck of a journey. But yeah, I think the other thing that's really cool too is, it just doesn't make any sense to me when you have this sort of mentality. I mean, everyone knows that you have to take action. There's no question, that action has to be taken. But you can't deny the fact that at some point you may need someone to give you a push and, give you that encouragement that you need, or to see something in you that you may not see yet. And so there's this quote by Kurt Vonnegut where he says that sometimes, you just have to make a leap, take a jump, and then grow your wings on the way down, right? So sometimes you may not have the strongest conviction or like be really ready or think that you have what it takes, but like Matt said, you do, and maybe someone else sees that in you and helps, and helps push you forward. Raquel, there was no convincing you to run. But yeah, but yeah, actually I did try. That is right. She's right. But anyways, yeah. So, that's kind of my thought on that. So we all definitely have what it takes, but please make sure that you build a system around you. That doesn't have to necessarily be people. It can be resources. It can be God. It can be, for me, sometimes, you guys see me talk about nature. I mean, there's nothing, in my opinion, I mean, we all believe in something, right? But for me, all I need to do is go outside, and I know right there that there's something far greater than me out there. And so, when you're out there in nature, it's just a place you can be. And we have this saying runners talk about: if you go out for a 4-hour run and you have problems or thoughts and you can't solve them, then you're probably not going to figure it out. So I think being outside, being in nature, and just disconnecting from the screen, right, from all of the noise in our life nowadays, and just blocking that noise. And Matt, it's just going to be phenomenal. And my hope is that, the system that you've put in place and the retreat and the way everything's laid out is just something that, people can model, and something that people can just continue to use in their daily life as small little changes, and just make those habits keep rolling.
For sure.
Yeah.
And there is something about getting out in nature, man. Like my happy place in the wintertime, I'm in the woods hunting. In the spring and summer, I am on the water, on a boat somewhere, or on the bank somewhere fishing. Either one of those places, like I've got to have that on a consistent basis, just to kind of decompress, declutter my mind, all the things. There's just something about it in there, about being out in God's creation and just woo-sawing, like
true.
a spiritual, mental woo-saw.
Totally. I know.
Yep.
Bryan talks, I've seen Bryan, you talk a lot about, like lessons you've learned from your dad and from your mom and others. And that's something, and I don't know, maybe it's just kind of where I live and the fact that I still live where a lot of my ancestors came a long time ago. But there's something about that too. When I think about, when I go outside, I look at my surroundings and I'm like, someone came here when there was nothing and didn't leave. Like they stayed, they had what it took.
No, it is incredible. And I think, we used to get up early, and I was like you, on the ranch working, and doing stuff, that's the reason. So if you guys see how often I post like sunrise photos, it's important to me because I have memories of a kid as a child growing up with my brother and my dad and being out working, the animals, the cattle, fixing fences and stuff. And every day that we were out there, my dad would stop as the sun was coming up, and we'd sit on the back of the pickup or kick up on the fence or something. And my dad would just sit there with us and we'd be quiet. He'd want us to be quiet as the sun was rising. And then after it was done, he'd kind of drop some dad knowledge or give us like a little tidbit. And I still today can't, it's amazing how when you're a teenager, you think your parents know nothing. And then when it's too late and they're gone, you realize that they knew everything. They had all the answers. You just didn't want to listen. And so, I think sometimes we overcomplicate stuff that doesn't need to be complicated. And, part of my reason for disconnecting and talking about nature so much is, human beings for literally thousands of years got away with doing nothing that we do now, right? Like anxiety, depression, chronic diseases, all these mental health disorders are all continuing to go up and up every year. So are prescriptions for all these medications every year. And what's happening? Screen usage and technology is going up every year, right? So as all this stuff progresses, so does all these diseases that were never there before and weren't in the levels that they are now. And so you wonder, like, what do we have that they didn't have? And the problem is we have too much, right? So you know, if you think about it, simple is best, right? So nature has everything for you that you need right outside. Everything that's inside is extra. So I try to think very simply like that. And I think the less time, as we're sitting here, right, all virtual from all over the world, and everyone's all digital. We got people from New Zealand and Mexico and everywhere. I'm talking about, you know, disconnecting from this, but I really think that is key for me, and why that time outside is so important. It's because when you're out there, there's none of this here. Yeah. So, and then you'll have, like, you know, I don't know, it's just a great place to be in, and what a great, you know, time to do that, to be there and reflect with people. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
For real.
Bryan, it's again, just based on like seeing how much you post about what you've learned from your parents and stuff. I know that for me, a big part of understanding who I am comes from my knowledge of my ancestors, right? Like that helps me feel who I am. And Mitch is always saying that who you are is way more important than what you have accomplished, right? And so I think it's really important. That's another thing that we're going to dive into, is just like this concept of who you are and what you do are not the same thing, but it really helps when they're aligned. Like that's when magic happens, right? But they're not the same. You got to pull them apart, because what you do is not who you are. But when they're aligned, some magic can happen.
And I really think too, something that really helped me like change my perspective, I'd be curious kind of what Mitch thought about this too, was you hear a lot of people talk about, oh, I did this, I did that, I found myself. And that's just another one of those things that I don't like that terminology, because I don't know what you're finding. Like, I'm physically here now, right? So I'm pretty sure I know where I'm located, at least most of the time. My wife would argue, but the point is that you're already here. So what you're doing is you're creating yourself, or you're taking what's already been found and you're molding it, right? So for people to say like, I found myself, or I need to go outside and find myself, you're already there. You're going out there and becoming and taking action and creating something, right? That's what you're doing. So I just wanted to mention that too, because that was when I really shifted my mindset. When if you're looking for something and you're trying to find yourself, you're always going to be looking, right? It's sort of like in life, you can look at life as a series of sprints, which I think is a terrible way to look at it. Or you can look at it as like a 200-mile ultra marathon, in the sense that, you have destinations that you're trying to get to, but these destinations are just stopping points on the whole trip. There is no finish line. There's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? The whole point is to love that journey along the way, because we all start and end at the same spot. At least for right now. We don't have the technology yet to fix that. I don't think Chat GPT is quite sharp enough yet. But again, no Chat GPT here. But the point is that we all stop and start at the same spot. So it's what you do in the middle that really matters. And so if you're constantly trying to find yourself, or you're trying to finish the assignment, get the degree, land the job, it's the wrong way to look at it. You need to think of those as like destinations, or like checkpoints, right? On this greater journey. And that's sort of my thought process there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just to share my thoughts on that subject, is that it really is all about becoming. And I believe that there's two secrets of the universe. And I say two because it sounds fancier. There's really just one secret of the universe, and I say it two different ways. And the first of the two is that the secret of becoming is that achievement always follows. The secret of becoming is achievement always follows. And then the second secret of the universe, that is the first secret said a different way, is when you focus on becoming, success becomes inevitable. And becoming is not guaranteed when we focus on success, when we focus on achieving, right? And so it just doesn't work the other way around. And I personally don't believe that we become better versions of ourselves. I believe that when we focus on progress and growth and success, becoming, that we only become more of who we really are. That within each of us, when we talk about, do I have what it takes? Like our personal power, our divine power that is created within us to build and to give and to love and to serve in the way that God or life or the universe has intended for us to do, is already within us, and we only become more of who we really are. And so that's why in all things, I consistently say who you are is so much more important than what you have accomplished. And as I thought about the people that are on this LinkedIn Live tonight, I to me, like I use the word sacred a lot. I think it's really sacred. I think it's really special that we're here tonight because of the topic. Like you all knew the topic and you chose to be here, which means that you are asking this question, which means that you know that you're meant for more. And you know that you're meant for more, not because you want more money or you want more fame or you want more recognition, but because it's something burning within inside you. And that's not something that everybody has, right? There's a lot of people that are happy with what they have, and not in an abundance perspective but of a complacency perspective. And that's okay. Like we're not here to judge. What we are here is to become more of who we really are. And for some of us, that's a lot more than the way we're living right now. And so as I thought about who might be here tonight, some of you might be unfulfilled at work despite performing at a high level. And some of you might be frustrated by the lack of clarity that you have about what you're passionate about. And others might be frustrated by the lack of consistency outside of work when they get home or when they wake up in the morning, or maybe guilty because of your lack of ability to be present in the relationships that you have because you're too tired by the end of the day. Or that, God and family are the top of your priorities in your mind and in your heart, but not in practice, or you're very critical of yourselves. I don't know if any of this is sounding familiar to any of you, but
check.
Right. Yeah.
This was
all the boxes.
This was my story, right? That I knew I could do more. And because I knew I was meant for more and I wanted more out of life, again, not because of the recognition, not because of anything else, but because I knew I had divine potential. It was something burning inside me that said that, like what Matt talked about, that there was a discrepancy between who I was, who I knew I was, who I really was, and what I was doing, the actions in my life. And so just to tell a little bit about my story, I was working at the largest company in the world, Fortune 1, Walmart home office. And although I was performing at a high level and getting praise and recognition, I felt like a fraud. And I would compare myself to the executives, which wasn't a good idea because I was pretty early in my career. But then on the other side, I would compare myself to the interns that were supposed to be the new people and supposed to be the ones that are just learning. And whether it was an executive or an intern, my brain would find any reason why they were smarter and faster and better at their job than I was. And I was getting an allergy shot in my rear end because it like snows pollen in Arkansas in the spring. And I was in the doctor's office with my wife. She was with me, and the doctor asked a simple question. They said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? How much stress do you experience in your life? And I thought about it, and I said, a 2. And my wife looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me?" And I was just like kind of embarrassed and felt pretty awkward. Like I'm sitting here between my wife and the doctor, and I'm like, who's wrong here? Right? Because she's like, you're like a 9. And she said that. And I was like, okay, the doctor just asked a pretty simple question. And I know that my wife is always right. I've learned that. And so I knew that I was living a level 9 out of 10 stressed life. And a few weeks or months later, I don't remember the exact timeline, I was talking to one of my mentors, and he said, like, you're Mitch Whiting. Like, you're freaking amazing. You love people like nobody else that I know. You are, an achiever. You're accomplishing amazing things. You do this and that and this and that. And he said, but do you realize that you view yourself as a wounded bird? And it hit me so hard. It was like this moment, the beginning of transformation that changed the rest of my life, because I realized that this unawareness that I had, that my life was unmanageable, that it was a 9 out of 10 stress level, and that I viewed myself as a wounded bird, woke me up. And from then on, I started spending time with one of my best friends. He doesn't know I exist, but I felt like he was one of my best friends. His name's Tony Robbins. I looked on Spotify and found like the free version of his Personal Power from the 80s. And I only listened to like 3 episodes, and then I moved on to something else. But
swear words.
Yeah, no, he's pretty incredible.
He is.
Tony Robbins. But I started diving into like Tim Ferriss and Mel Robbins and Brendan Burchard and Stacey Bayman and Brooke Castillo and David Bayer and all of these amazing, great minds who had figured out something that I didn't understand, which was that the problem in our lives is never the problem. The problem is always in our thinking. And through this experience of becoming obsessed with psychology and neuroscience, I started discovering myself. And I started to create, like Amelia just said, like momentum in my life. Momentum started to happen. And I started creating daily on LinkedIn, right? And I started, I struggled for 10 years to exercise. And now I run a half marathon almost every weekend just for fun, all on my own in the mountains, right? And it's like, you know, I went from a place of being almost $40,000 in debt to becoming debt free and, you know, focused and building our, you know, our net worth and preparing for emergencies and building wealth. And just last week left corporate America, right? And like have scaled my business to replace my income. And I'm doing now what I've always wanted to do, which is actually what I didn't know was possible for me to do, which is to coach other people, other ordinary people to do extraordinary things so that they can live with passion, deepen their relationships, and make more money. And so I just like, I want everybody to know on this call that like, you're not alone. And on average, we spend 10 to 20 hours a week in a state of stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. And for many of my clients, it's up to 100 hours a week. And these are like attorneys, executives, you know, mid-level career professionals. They are people that from the outside, like many of us, things look pretty freaking awesome, but we're suffering on the inside.
Yep.
Nobody knows, including sometimes us. And we say we're a 2 to the public, but in reality, we're a 9 out of 10. And so if you just want to throw up, Chris, that image, through this journey, I've spent literally tens of thousands of dollars in the past 12 months investing in coaching for myself. And I've created my own proprietary method for transformation, which is what I call the 6 fundamental forces. And it's a combination of our psychology, understanding of our psychology, but also, our neuroscience. And one of the big distinctions here is that we experience our circumstances, which are, oh, did I lose you? Oh, here it is.
No, sorry. I was trying something live that I shouldn't have tried. My bad.
Oh, you're good. Our circumstances are what's outside of our control. So it's the weather, it's our past, it's the people around us, and we can't change our circumstances. But what we do is we, you know, experience this stimulus of circumstance in our life, and our brain assigns meaning to our experience. And the meaning we assign to our experience is what we call beliefs. It's the electrically excitable cells called neurons have pathways between them called neural synaptic connection, and they store memory and they assign meaning to our lives so that our brain can run efficiently. And we don't have to walk up to a door and say like, oh, what is this? Is this a tree? Is this a cloud? Like, how do I open it? We just, you know, become automatic in our thinking rather than systematic, and we assign meaning to beliefs. But unfortunately, so when we're born, we have 100 billion neurons. And when we're born, we also have 25 billion synaptic connections. In other words, we're underdeveloped, right? And like we can scream, we can poop, we can cry, we can grip, we can suck. We can do these things for survival, but we're underdeveloped. By the age of 7, we still have 100 billion neurons, but we have about a quadrillion synaptic connections. In other words, the majority of your beliefs were formed before the age of 7. Okay. And so in a lot of ways, the meaning that we assign to our experience, our beliefs, were randomly assigned. And what happens is our beliefs are the literal lens by which we perceive our reality. And so we don't see nobody sees reality. We see the reality that we pay attention to. And I have this exercise that I take my clients through where we close our eyes, and I'll just let everybody do this right now. So everybody close your eyes, and I'm just going to give you 5 seconds. And in these 5 seconds, I'm going to invite you to look around the room and count as many things that you can see are red. Okay, so go for it. 5 seconds, count as many objects or things you see that are red. Okay, close your eyes again. And for a lot of you, the answer is probably you saw like 3 to 5 things that were red. Okay, well now with your eyes closed, how many things did you see that were blue? Probably close to 0. And sometimes it's like, I saw 1 or 2 and you open your eyes and you're like, oh crap, it was green. And so what happens is the blue was always there, but we focus, our beliefs are the lens by which we perceive reality. And so if you have a belief like going to the gym is too hard, or I'm not good enough, or money is hard to make, then what your brain does is it uses your 5 data collectors, your 5 senses, and it will perceive or filter your experience through that lens where you only see evidence to support that you're not good enough. And the sacred work that we do in coaching is to take a look at the unconscious beliefs that we're unaware of as individuals that are operating our lives, because our beliefs then dictate our thoughts. And so if you can overcome and transform a belief like I'm not good enough, then the thoughts that my boss doesn't like me, and I messed up that call, and I'm clumsy, I can't believe I dropped that, I'm an idiot, and why can't I be patient, right? All these different thoughts that all actually come from the core of this unconscious belief that I'm not good enough, take care of themselves. And then within that moment of transformation, we change our life, because our thoughts are what dictate how we feel. And then our feelings drive our actions, and our actions produce our results. And our results will be more data to support this new belief that we are good enough, or going to the gym, or going out on a run, or experiencing nature is something that can transform us. And so we literally, yes, Nicole, this is literally the work of rewiring our brains, creating a new neural network. And at first it's difficult and it's uncomfortable. And it's like, because the more times, like there was a study done of brains that are OCD brains, right? People with obsessive compulsive disorder. And what they found is that these, between 2 neurons, the same thought will fire between the same 2 neurons. And that synaptic connection, or that electrical pathway, the more that you repeat that thought or that belief over time, it will get thicker and thicker and thicker. And with an OCD brain, like, did I turn off the oven? The house is going to burn down. Did I turn off the oven? 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 They would have the same thought so frequently and so often and so many times that synaptic connection, that neural pathway, would become so thick that it would leave a literal indentation in the brain. And so they're like 5-lane highways that our brain loves efficiency, and it gets on, it experiences something that says, yeah, I'm not good enough. And it just jumps right there, and it's natural. And even though the destination is miserable, it's efficient. And so it'll take you to that miserable place. And so restructuring our brain at first is like driving and plowing through a field of corn. Like you're just like hitting all the rocks and all the crop, and it's uncomfortable, and it's not easy, and it's slow, and it takes time, and it's intentional. But then the more that you operate and collect data moving forward for that new belief intentionally with the models and frameworks and tools and resources and technologies that we have in this coaching container, then eventually it becomes a dirt road. And then you're using it, you're sending so much traffic down there that eventually you've got to pave that 1 lane, and then it becomes a 2 lane, then it becomes a 3 lane. And what happens is the 5-lane highway that you're no longer using starts to deteriorate, starts to fall apart, because that's what happens when you don't maintain a highway or use it. And then the new one becomes your new normal, your new efficient. And we literally rewire our brain and become new creatures, new people, which is not actually new, but more of who we really are. And that's the secret of becoming that. Those are the 6 fundamental forces. And I love all these comments. And go ahead.
Mitch, and what's so cool about this is I love how you had it like a circle, because that's how I was like trying to explain it. And what's interesting is another analogy, if it's hard for people to follow, for me, it's like, I feel like I'm back in school again, right? But for some people, if they can't think about it in the sense of like these neurons and the synapses and these chemicals that are sending signals back and forth across here, I tell them the same thing that he's talking about, this neuroplasticity, or the ability to rewire your brain, and this belief and thought leading to result, is exactly what's happening in your skeletal muscle or when you physically exercise. So a lot of people know that as you exercise, right, or as you become more cardiovascularly, more physically fit, your body actually grows more and sprouts more little blood vessels. It gets more efficient at using oxygen. You develop, right? So it's the same sort of thing that's happening. So just like you can change your physical body, you can do the same thing in your mind. The problem is that you can't see it, right? So like that's what makes it so challenging, I think, Mitch. So like if you're a runner or you lift weights or you're a swimmer, you can track your progress with a physical number, because we can chart that. You can say, I deadlifted 500 pounds, now I deadlifted 700. So you can measure progress or whatever. But it's a lot more challenging when you're doing that remodeling inside of your brain. But to his point, it can definitely be done. And it's really powerful when you can tap into it and learn how to do it. So this is incredible. I hope, this is great.
Yeah, and when we talk about like being able to measure this process, like the measurement that we have is the number of hours that we spend a week in a primal state, right? We talk about on average it's 10 to 20 hours. For many of my clients, it's up to 100 hours per week, which is around all of their waking hours, and it's okay. It's normal. A lot of people are suffering, right? And I was one of them, and I still do in moments. But I've got for me, it was 40 hours a week is what I was spending in a state of stress, anxiety, overwhelm, self-doubt, hesitation, procrastination. And so by doing the work, the inner work of rewiring our brains, then we get those hours back and we live a different life. And it's like when you become more of who you really are, there's more of you to give. And what that is we call that value. And as we give that value, what does the world exchange for value? Money, right?
Money.
And so we have like more prosperity in our lives, and we're able to deepen our relationships and live with passion. And we're going to be talking about, like, Bryan, Matt, myself, we're all going to be at this outdoor retreat, Inside Outside, and we're going to be, going deep into this work and rewiring our brains and finding the power within, so that everybody can walk away not just knowing they have what it takes, but having the resources to step into what it takes. To rewire their brain, to step into a state of power instead of a state of misery and suffering. And for those of you that can't make it, my calendar's open for free consultation. If you want to hop on my LinkedIn profile, that's always an invitation that's open, and we can go deeper and explore to see if, this work is something that you want to do. If you want to transform your life, and if it's a good fit, we can talk about what that looks like in my program. But we hope to see a lot of you. Men. This specific event is for men. We help men and women, but this specific event is going to be for men to unplug in the outdoors, and we hope that we see many of you, because we're all going to be there, and it's going to be really special.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Is anyone?
I was going to say,
is anyone still wondering why Mitch and Bryan, like, in my mind, had to be at this? Is anyone wondering that? It's like, you guys, totally incredible, right?
And I will say too,
incredible.
Just to address, because I like one of the comments over here. I guess it's Kale Tanner, who's talking about journaling. I don't know if that's something that Mitch practices or if it's something that he recommends, but I've been doing this now, for a long time. So it started out with like a sketchbook. I also am an artist. And then it basically transitioned over like the last 7 to 10 years into, adding words, not just pictures to this. And I will say that is a good way to model progress. And I just want to use this quote, which you guys will laugh at me because I'm a Texas boy and I love me some Matthew McConaughey. And he has, if you haven't read his book yet, Green Lights, you should read it, because it's incredible. I know he's an actor, but the book is phenomenal. And he has a quote in there where he talks about, and this really hit me, that he journals not to write down what he wants to remember, but he journals to write down what he wants to forget. And I really think, it made me think back to the majority of what is actually in my journal. And it really is, and that's how I look at LinkedIn too, this whole public journaling thing. It really is a way for me to, you guys just happen to be the byproduct of it and happen to, benefit as well. But for me, I'm just putting things out there because I want to get rid of them. And so a lot of times people think that you're writing something down to remember it. But for me, I write it down to forget it too sometimes. So, I really just like that comment about journaling. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, love that, Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Kale Tanner, who happens to be married to my baby sister and is my
very cool
brother.
Nice.
A true legend.
That's why he said my brother-in-law earlier. I was wondering who he was talking to.
Yeah, exactly.
So since that was great stuff, Mitch, you went like really deep, and I love it. But you kind of set up the perfect segue into the Inside Outside retreat. Tell us about that. Like, dive deep into it.
Yeah.
Let everybody know. We kind of teased it at the beginning. We've talked about being out in nature. Like, tell us what's going on with it.
Yeah, I also really quick want to say, like, for the women that are here, and if you have men that are in your home or in your community or at work that need to be here, like let them know, invite them, kick them out of the door, and send them on a plane or on a road trip to get here, because they will never be the same. We'll permanently change the way we live our lives from here on out with the community that we build and the inner work that we'll be doing.
Yeah, I thought that was really awesome to see so many women participating, like in the comments as we started out there. And saying like,
we're
doesn't mean that they can't lead or they don't. That's like
your internet.
We're losing you.
Yeah, we're losing you, bro. Your internet connection's like bottoming out, steadily going down. How
about now?
Anybody at home? Is anybody else there like streaming anything? It's coming back up.
Okay, we've got him back.
I think I'm back.
I think we had you back. Yeah.
You started talking about how needing men to lead and how amazing the women of LinkedIn have been so supportive and engaged. That's where we heard.
Yeah. So that's all I was saying. I just think that that's really cool, and that it's not a sign like women want men to be leaders. It doesn't mean they can't lead and aren't leaders themselves, but like they need leaders, right? And so that's really one of the things that, like, one of the outcomes we want, right? Like Mitch talked about how we have these self-limiting beliefs, and many of them were established before we were even 7 years old. Like, that's crazy. And yet we hang on to them. We feel shame. We feel regret, all this kind of stuff. And we honestly want you to be free of that. We want you to be absolutely free of that. And so that's the thing, is like, we want you to be able to leave this event and feel like, I have what it takes. I know who I am, and I can live free and lead. Like, I can be a leader, right? So we picked a place that enables us to be outside pretty much all the time. And we're going to be around a campfire, like close proximity. We're going to be talking about things that maybe we've never talked about with anyone before. We're going to be recording some of those things. And then, like Bryan said, where we journal them to let them go, we're going to write them on a piece of wood and we're going to throw them in the campfire, and we're going to be done with them, right? We're also going to go on a hike. We're going to talk about how leadership is a mountainless journey. And so we're going to get outside and we're going to disconnect from the noise, from our regular day-to-day, even from the good things like we talked about. We're going to get away from our families, the things that we love, the people that we want to serve. We're going to get away from them. We're going to get outside, and we're going to find purpose. We're going to find community, and we're going to find some amazing tools and frameworks so that when we go back to the day-to-day, to our regular lives, we know what to do when those things start to sneak back in, because they're inevitably going to, right? Like, we all know that.
And you know what I think is amazing too, and this may be, I don't know, it may be like overly simple, but there's a big distinction between, and this is the analogy I use, there's a big distinction between hearing and listening, right? And I always think of this really funny. I love The Office and Family Guy. You would think that the guy that has like 3 degrees would be watching something really educational, but I watch the stupidest stuff ever because that's just how I relax. And you guys know that. And there's this hilarious quote from Michael Scott in The Office where, no, it's actually Dwight Schrute. Him and Michael are talking, and Dwight's not listening. And he goes, "Are you listening to me?" And Dwight says, "I was aware that you were speaking." And so what I think of is, I think that these retreats are such a great idea, and it's the reason that I got on board to be a part of this with Matt and with Mitch, because you can do this at home without this disconnection and without this fully stepping away. But there's so much stimuli nowadays with technology. I'm going to keep talking about that because I really do. If you look at studies where technology is introduced into our society, there are spikes every time new technology is introduced with all kinds of disease, with poor health, with type 2 diabetes, right? The more that we're here on this screen now, right, the worse it is for all of us, okay? So what I think is really cool about this process that Mitch talks about with his proprietary method, and what Matt talks about being around the campfire and being disconnected even from the things that we love, is it's like a hard reset, right? So with your phone or with your TV or your computer, you can do a soft reset or you can do a hard reset. And when you do the hard reset, it cleans things up. It happens quicker. Things start fresh. And so that's what I really am stoked and excited about with this retreat, is that you're going to be fully disconnected, and it's like a hard reboot. I don't know if that made sense at all, but it made sense in my head. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah, made sense in my head too, as you were saying it.
Absolutely.
I really love the logo of Inside Outside. You might notice it's an I with an O inside at the outside, but it's also the symbol of power, of technology. And it's about discovering our power within and discovering more of who we are, right? And like that hard reset, right? You hold down that button for a few seconds, maybe 12 to 15 seconds, and you get that hard reset. And you get to become, you get to clean out the junk like you're talking about. And it's so relevant. And I was just learning a little bit about Beethoven's life. And I don't know if many of you know this, but he had a hearing loss, and he ended up becoming fully deaf. And he said one of the most impactful quotes that I've ever heard, which was something like, it was after he had become completely deaf. He said, "In the silence of my deafness, the greatest symphonies that the world has ever heard were born." And what it takes sometimes is getting into the silence of our soul, right? And we live in a day where you can't even go to a restaurant or in a retail establishment without music, right? And we have more light pollution. We can't see the stars. And we have cars, and we have all this pollution, and let alone our phones and our Apple Watches. I mean, all the technology. And I firmly believe we live in a day that is more difficult to hear the voice of God or life or the universe than any day in history. And so by taking this time to be intentional and connect with yourself, you can find the world's greatest symphonies that you are meant to create, that you were born to establish and to create to this world.
I want to point out what brother-in-law said here. How often do you restart those devices when they become bogged down with stuff running in the background? Why not do that with yourself regularly?
You should.
I love that, because before I go live, every time I restart my computer to clear everything off the RAM, to get it all, to get it reset so there's no issues, to make sure that my computer is running as efficiently as possible before I try to host a live stream. Same thing with your phone. Whenever it starts acting crazy, what's the first thing you do?
Hard reset.
Restart it. Whenever your computer at work's going nuts and you call the IT guy, what's the first thing he tells you to do? Restart it.
Reset.
Yep.
And it reminds me too. I love the way Mitch too talked about it. There's so much stimuli nowadays in our life, and I do think that that's why we see so much more expression and so much more frequency of a lot of these mental health ailments that we see now, is because things were so much simpler way back when, when you had to chop wood, right? And when you had to really do physical work, there were no distractions. And so because of that, there were less issues. I really believe that. And, you guys know that I'm a big, I'm writing my book right now, and it's written like in a philosophy kind of format. I'm a big fan of like the old fashioned Stoic philosophers. And one of the originals, one of the oldest one, was a guy named Diogenes. And he has this famous quote that's been ripped off for thousands of years. But he was the first person that ever originally said, and he said, "He has the most who is content with the least," right? And so there is never a time in the world where that statement is more applicable, in my opinion, than today. Because even though we all have all these technology devices, I'm telling you, the 90 minutes to 2 hours every day that I'm outside uninterrupted with no technology at all is some of the most powerful time that I have in my own head. And there is so much that you can get done when there's nothing else around but your thoughts. And so, like Mitch's method, and just what he was talking about, is very hard to do when there's a lot of external stimuli around, I think. And so that's why I think part of that reset really has to be learning that less is more, not just in technology, but just in general.
Yep, I agree 100%.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, we have hit an hour. Is there anything else we want to add? Do we want to open it up for some questions about anything?
I was just going to say, I'm going to stay for Q&A if anyone would like to, but everyone's free to go and disconnect and get some rest. But anybody, I'll stay on for a few minutes.
Yeah, for sure. So if y'all have any questions about Inside Outside, about anything that either one of these three guys have said, you want to ask them something personally, drop it in the chat. I'll see it. We'll put it up there and get it answered for you. This has been a great discussion tonight, y'all. Y'all dug deep. I liked all the different perspectives from all different walks of life. Yeah, Raquel, it was a great convo. Hey, Raquel jumped over to my side.
Hey,
I feel special now.
Yeah, she's not paired anymore.
Yeah, she was over there on yours.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions too, and you don't feel comfortable asking them here, like Mitch was saying, feel free if you're connected to any of us, or if you're not, feel free to do that and ask. Matt will probably have the most information, but feel free to reach out if there's anything that you just don't feel like you can share here. We're happy to chat.
For sure. Somebody
we got Todd Brady signed up for the event. Can't wait to see you there, Todd.
Yeah, Todd's coming.
Awesome.
I see a question from Daniel. Are there more Inside Out events planned in the future? And the answer is yes. So there's actually already one on the books for August 11th, 12th, and 13th. will be another one this year.
Where's that going to be?
It's going to be at the same location.
Awesome.
Now, where is it? I don't know if we mentioned it. Where is it going to be? It's in where?
Yeah, it's in Payson, Arizona. It's about 2 hours away from the Phoenix airport.
Okay.
So we'll be in the Pines in an absolutely beautiful place right underneath the Mogollon Rim. And that's where we're going to hike, is right up on top of the rim. So, I mean, it's just a totally incredible.
It's actually where we're hiking to is where my wife and I took our engagement photos. It's pretty spectacularly gorgeous.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah,
not as gorgeous as my wife, but it's gorgeous.
Also, one of the things that Mitch and I always talk about is how this is only the beginning, and the sky is actually not the limit, but our minds. So this is truly just the beginning. Like, there's nothing to say that we won't have these at many more locations and in many more formats.
I mean,
days and weeks. So
what I would love to see too, what could be really neat is, I think we gel really well, us here. And so I think it would be so cool. Mitch, I don't want to announce anything publicly, but he may be, in a different place soon. And I'm here in Texas, and it could be so cool how this whole model, this whole process, I mean, here in the Texas Hill Country with the photos that you guys see, I mean, this could be something where, like you said, this is just the beginning. And so for the person in the comments that mentioned, like, or even Mitch mentioned, like, needing to do those hard resets every now and then, well, it might be something where we can bring it closer and make it easier for people too,
Absolutely.
So I really like where you're headed with it, Matt.
For sure. Harrison had a question for Mitch. Who, besides Tony, who's been the biggest influence on your thinking and transformation?
Yeah, I mean, first thing that comes to mind is Jesus Christ has been a huge influence for me. Studying the Word of God, studying the words, not just that I hear, even from Tony or from these other like great coaches. I believe that there's words heard and there's words felt. And the words felt come from, God or life or the universe will connect with our soul, and they'll be in alignment with truth. And a lot of the work that we do in my coaching is to understand the fact that the quality of the thoughts that drive you into a primal state of stress, anxiety, and overwhelm is that 100% of the time they're untrue. And we do the work to be able to find the evidence of that from our life, from your life and the lives of others, and to find then some form of the opposite that is true. And as you listen to your inner voice, your what I call it, your emotional compass, your nervous system, it will tell you whether you're in alignment or truth or not based on the state that you're operating in. If you're in a powerful state, that's because the belief that you have, like I'm good enough, or I can figure this out, or whatever it is, will drive you into a powerful state. But a belief like I can't make money doing what I love, and it creates stress and fear, or I'm not fast enough at my job, and it creates stress or fear or anxiety or overwhelm or self-doubt. Those are untrue thoughts, and they're out of alignment with God and the universe and life. And so what happens is it creates distress and disconnection in your soul or your emotional compass. And so I would say Jesus Christ has had a massive impact on me. Also, like listening to a part of that, like listening to the words felt, not just the words heard within my own soul. But then also I'd say Brooke Castillo has had a big impact on me. David Bayer has had a big impact on me. Jim Rohn has had a big impact on me. Mel Robbins years ago had a big impact on me. James Clear. There's just so many. I just never stop learning. As well, my clients continue to teach me so much. So great question.
Yep, it was. Anybody else have anything? Any other questions at all? Now is the time to do it. Somebody mentioned, Jamie mentioned a hill country in the Texas, a retreat in the Texas hill country would be awesome. That would be awesome. That's like a hop, skip, and a jump from Bryan.
I'm right in it. Yeah,
I was gonna say, really, he's right in it. Yeah,
that's where I am. Yeah, that's we call it God's country here, but it's.
I think every Texan from every part of Texas calls it God's country. Wherever,
really
and they say that in northern
yeah.
Idaho as well. You got competitors in northern Idaho. They always say it up there.
Bring them down.
Yeah,
Love to, yeah. It's and
we'll
that area of
convert 'em.
Idaho's gorgeous too. But no, it's a great spot, and I mean, anyone can start these practices now. Like one of the first things I tell people is, you see a lot of these people talk about, oh yeah, I get up at 4 a.m, I do a cold plunge, I drink kale juice for 6 hours, I meditate for 20, I run 40 marathons a day. Like really all you have to do is 2 or 3 days a week, just go outside for 30 minutes. I mean, it can start like very small, being with your thoughts, and having a coach or having someone, having a process that you can do during that time, or having space set aside. It's all about just taking a small action. It compounds, you create momentum, and then it just continues. So I think that, and I think what would be really cool, and then I'm old, you guys, Matt's talking about his 20s. The guy like just turned 30. So he's talking about like yesterday, right? I'm almost 41, so give me a break. But yeah, I think what's really cool, Matt, and would be a lot of fun maybe, is to do something very similar to this after the retreat. And I think that would be really impactful, to have some people, not just me and you and Mitch and Chris and whatever, but maybe have some people on that attended the retreat and have like an after event like this. And we can get probably some of the same guests back, and then they can kind of hear about how it was. I think that would be really powerful.
Absolutely.
It would be pretty good. I like that idea. We'll have to reconvene after the retreat and find a few people that would be willing to come on and talk about it. That would be awesome. I'd be willing to do another one of these for that.
Cool.
It would be cool.
Yeah, Chris, the last thing that I want to say is just like, I just want everyone that's still listening, I know some people have had to hop off, to just know like our commitment has nothing to do with us. Like Mitch mentioned it earlier. When you really discover who you are, you discover you have so much more to give. And that's why we're going. And that's how we're going to show up is for you, or for whoever's there, whether it's 10 people or 30 people, we're going to be there for you. So can't wait.
I love it. Cool, man. So this has been absolutely amazing. Definitely worth staying up to the cusp of my bedtime for. I loved it.
I see my wife like turning off lights, and she's like,
lights.
She's like banging. She's like, get in here.
Yeah. So that's just one of the things you deal with when you deal with people from across different parts of the country. Is you got to work within time zones, man.
Yes, and thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much.
No, it was absolutely my pleasure. I appreciate you asking me, Mitch. I appreciate you bringing me into this, and just introducing me to Matt. Of course, I knew Bryan already, But just thank you so much. Bryan, you want to leave us with any parting words?
I just got to say
before we
one
get
thing.
out of here?
I just
Go, Mitch.
appreciate
Go, Mitch.
Nina Khan's comment so much. She said, once I'm at the gym or at work, I feel great. But when I'm back home with myself, it seems like that I'm going to collapse. And I just want you to know so clearly from a coach, someone who spends every day working with people who are experiencing the same exact thing as you, right?
Yep.
Like I was just on a call with an incredibly high performing individual that has had a 20-year career of high success, and something flipped in their lives recently, and they don't know what's wrong with them. And the truth is nothing's wrong with them, but they wake up every morning at 4:30 and they go walk on the beach and they have peace, and they promise themselves every day that today is going to be different. And then they spend 100 hours a week in this state of stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. And as soon as they're back to work and back into life, they fall apart again. And I just want you to know that it's normal. And like, if you want to hop on a call, I'd beyond happy to support you and look at, how we can support you and get you the resources that you need, because life doesn't have to be that way. But we just don't have the manual for the greatest technology of the universe, which is the human brain. And when you understand how to operate it, you can intentionally choose thoughts and emotions that drive your actions and produce the results that are useful for you and that you want. And so I just want you to send me a connection request. Happy to talk. You can even just even without being connected, hit the link on my profile to sign up for a consultation. And I'd love to spend a free hour with you, just exploring where you're at, where you want to be, and if we can bridge that gap together, what that could look like.
Cool. I love it. Awesome. Well, guys, I think that's it. If anybody else has anything to say, Bryan, you good? Matt,
I'm good.
You got anything you want to leave us with?
Live free and lead.
Live free and lead. Sign up for the Inside Outside. If you missed the QR code, connect with one of these guys. I've tagged all of them a couple of times on my side. If you're watching on my side and you missed it, let me know. I'll make an introduction on LinkedIn, in the LinkedIn DMs with either one of these three if you're not already signed up, and I'm sure they would do the same for the rest of us, right? So
yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right on, man. Well, I appreciate it. Y'all, this has been awesome. This has been an amazing collaboration. I have loved every minute of it. So thank you again, and we will see y'all after the retreat right back here.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, you guys take it easy. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mitch.